Hey there, Jam Play. I'm Tyler Grant. Thanks for joining me today. We are in week 5 of our Simple Country Guitar Solos series here. Certainly grateful to be working from home during these times, and hope you all are doing your best and getting a lot of guitar playing in. And I hope you and your loved ones are safe and healthy at this time. So we're doing part 2 of Pickin' with the Chickens. Now this is a completely new solo. We're just kind of using some of the same licks and kind of picking up where we left off on the last week's round. And that was in G, and we were kind of introduced to the concept of chicken picking, which has a bit to do with hybrid style picking or finger style picking. I kind of play this hybrid style when I'm chicken picking. So in other words, with my picking hand, I use a lot of the pick and the fingers together, or in alternation. And that gets you a little bit of a snap on the string when you use your fingers, and you kind of like actually pull on the string. I mean, there's chicken picking right there. Put your first finger on the 5th fret of the G string, and then take your middle finger of your picking hand and just, it's like slapping a bass. You kind of pull the string out so it slaps against the frets. And then do a little alternating with your 3rd finger on the 7th fret of the D string. And that gives you that chicken picking sound. You're actually kind of trying to sound like a chicken. So, you know, chicken picking is a style of playing, but it's really just kind of a description of this kind of quacky, percussive Telecaster style, okay? So you don't need a Telecaster, obviously. You're going to need either an electric guitar or an acoustic guitar with really light strings on it, because there's some big bends happening here. So this series obviously is geared toward electric guitar, but you could play a Gibson, you could play a Fender, it doesn't matter what type of electric guitar. The typical sound of this kind of twangy sort of chicken picking style is, you know, a single coil bridge pickup. So this is a Telecaster, obviously modded quite a bit. It's got a, you know, middle pickup and such. But I'm on the bridge pickup, and if you had a Strat or anything with single coils, that's fine. If you had something with humbuckers, that's fine too. Just put it on the bridge pickup and get a nice twangy sound. Not too bright. The amp I'm using today is rather bright, so I have my tone knob rolled like way down, and it's still. Still pretty bright. Okay, so let's go ahead and get right into this solo. Chris, if you want to put the tablature up on the page. Now the tablature's there for you. You don't necessarily need it. I'm going to kind of coach you through this bit by bit, but many of us are visual learners, and the tablature really helps to keep track of this as we go. And obviously all you Jam Play members have access to these materials. You can actually download this tablature and print it out, and then you'd have it to work with. But I'm going to be coaching you through it one lick at a time. So we're starting with the same figure that we started with last week. We're in a different key, however. Taking a step back, the chord progression we're going to be playing is a blues in A. So we're going to be in the key of A here. Still using the same changes, the 1, the 4, and the 5 chord. So a lot of our language and vocabulary and a lot of the same licks are going to carry over from last week. But like I said, this is a whole new thing here. And we're starting in this sort of A major pentatonic position. And this is a really common key. Telecaster players, country players really like A, because you got this, that low A string. You're in a nice position. to get a lot of those licks in. So we're starting down here, and we do that same figure that we started with last week, which is just a dead string triplet, click, click, click. And the way I'm doing this is middle finger, and you see a little M on the page. And again, with the notation, this notation program we use, it puts the finger style fingerings up on the actual notes and not down on the tab. So just keep in mind, you're going to look up at the actual notes and you'll see a little M finger. So if you don't see a pick stroke and you're curious about what's happening and what finger you're supposed to use for the picking hand, you'll see it up right next to the actual notes, okay, in the notation. So it starts with M finger, downstroke, M finger, or M, thumb, M. Okay, on a deadened string. And then you get right to this first lick, and that's thumb, M, third finger there on the 4th fret of the D string, first finger on the 2nd fret of the G string, your A note. So that first little bit goes, and that's kind of become our sort of go-to chicken picking lick number 1. We started it last week in that same way. And then you go ahead and play the 4th fret of the G string, and then you give that a whole step bend. It says full, that means a full whole step. And then, and you kind of need the help, especially down here in open position, you need the help of at least one other finger to bend that. And you see I'm leveraging against my thumb here, doing a push bend, and then I'll reach with the 4th finger and grab that with my M finger and hold it while I bend that note again. So there's a lot of material here in that first measure and a bit of technical stuff because you're down here. If you were up the neck, it's a lot easier because the tension of the string is so much less here. But we're down here at open position, and I did that on purpose because you got to get good at controlling your bends down here where there's a little more tension. It takes a little more effort. Frets are a little further apart. So there we go. That first measure with the pickup notes sounds like. Except I was supposed to let this note ring. I killed it on accident. Try it again. So you have both of those notes ringing there at the end. Okay? So let's try that together really, really slow. A ready and a slow. Okay, there you go. You can hear that train coming. Then we're in the same position, and we're going to do this kind of stock country lick. Okay, so that's your 1st finger on the 2nd fret of the E string. And your 4th finger plays that 5th fret that we were already playing in the measure before on the B string. And you kind of roll your way down with the A finger, in other words, your ring finger of the picking hand, to the M finger, and then your pick or your thumb takes that 4th fret note, bends it a whole step, and then you play the tonic note with your 1st finger. So that's a real standard kind of major pentatonic country lick right there. So all the way up to that so far. Okay. And then you got 2 little deadened strokes. You could either alternate your thumb and your M finger in a hybrid style, or you can do, as I wrote, just a regular old down-up stroke. Get those 2 little clicks in there for percussion, and then you work your way down a minor pentatonic scale to make a nice little mixture lick. We like to mix the major and the minor pentatonics for a bit of sophistication. You could use one or the other, but we get the most action out of them when we do these what we call mixture licks. So we start with this major and end with that minor thing. It's like a conversation, you know, between this bright sound and this more dark kind of minor sound, bluesy, kind of back and forth. All right? So the first two measures in context sound like, and we're going to take our time working through this solo bit by bit, because each one of these measures has a real specific technique and, you know, material that might take you a little bit of practice to get under control. So here's the first two measures in context. Double clicks there to get ready for the next measure. So let's try that together, those first two measures, nice and slow. And the triplets come in on the and of 4. Okay, the pickup notes come in on the and of 4. So I'll count a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. Okay, let's try that again now that you understand the count off. On the end of 4, a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. Okay, great. Moving on, the next measure we do this sort of sliding pentatonic thing, and we're going up that A major pentatonic sort of sliding scale. If you're studying up on your pentatonic patterns, that's what it is. If you need to know more about your pentatonic patterns, check out my Classic Country Chops course on jam play, where I get really deep into each of the relevant scales and kind of how to use them. But here's one way to use that particular scale pattern. I'm going to do these quick little slides. The first one is the first fret to the second fret of the low E string. Okay, that's the first one. And in between each of these figures, I do a little dead string click. So that's why this measure looks sort of complicated, because it's... There's a little string click, either with your finger or an upstroke with a pick, whatever you're most comfortable with. And you don't necessarily have to do those, but it's gonna add that chicken picking sound to it, a little more percussive. So that measure sounds like... like so. So let me get the fingering right, and I'll show you again. So first finger plays that slide from the first to the second fret of the low E string. And then I'm going to pluck a downstroke on the open A. On the upstroke, I'll catch the dead string. And then third finger will slide from the third to the fourth fret of the A string. And then your first finger is right there on the second fret. And those would be two downstrokes. So you can catch that upstroke on the dead string. Next string, exact same thing, third to the fourth fret of the D string. And then, with the second finger, slide from the fifth to the sixth fret of the G string, and then grab that first finger on the fifth fret of the B string, and then a little quick little click. So, all together again, that measure is... just moving up that scale with that kind of little figure, okay? So let's try that measure by itself. Ready, and a slow, and And the cool thing about that is that sets us up into our minor pentatonic shape up here on the fifth fret, fifth position. So from here, we're going to do a similar set of licks as we did in the beginning with the bend but we're going to be in a minor pentatonic scale. So third finger will bend that 7th fret of the G string up a whole step. Fourth finger grabs that 8th fret of the B string, and you hold those, and then you do a double stop pinch. So you bend it first, pinching, I mean playing the thumb and one of your fingers at the same time. It kind of looks like a pinch. You do that, and then you play it again, held, and then you play it one more time, and you release it. Release the bend, holding both those notes down. So. And you land that way. 5th fret with your 1st finger of the G string, 7th fret with your 3rd finger. So that's just kind of using the same thing we were doing down here, but up here it sounds more bluesy. Okay? So those two measures, measures 3 and 4, the complete measure, they're written 4 and 5, but the complete measures 3 and 4, those first two measures of the second line go like this. Of course, we got a couple of those coming up. Okay, so let's try those two measures now in context. Ready and a slow and okay, so those 4 measures that we've worked through so far are all on an A chord. But we've gone from this major sound to a little bit of a darker minor pentatonic sound back and forth a couple times. So let's play those first 4 measures, and then I'm going to take a couple questions, okay? So from the top up to where we just landed, nice and slow. 1, 2, 3, and a 4. Okay, cool. Well, we'll keep working through this in a moment. We have one question. What gauge strings are you using to bend from the B? I'm using light gauge strings, 10s on this here Telecaster. A lot of country players use even lighter strings. These are standard light. I guess 9s would be considered extra light. And a lot of country players use those because, not just because of the bending, but because it's easier to get that chicken pickin' kind of slap on the strings when the strings are a little bit lighter. But I play a variety of styles, and I don't really go much lighter than 10s. At least I haven't, since I was in high school. I remember those super slinkies I used to use. But I use D'Addario strings, EXL 110 is the set. Nickel wound 10 gauge, 10 to 42 or something. And another question, is it harder to play this style with a floating bridge or tremolo? No, it's not necessarily. I wouldn't say it's harder. It's just when you bend a string, when you do double stop bends and you have a floating bridge, this note, when you bend it, is going to make this one go flat. So it's kind of tricky. Most country players who do this type of style would just have a fixed tailpiece. On my Strat, there was a long time where I just like tightened the bridge all the way down, so I could still use it this way, but if I bent a string, at least it wouldn't make the other strings go out of tune. But there's ways around that, and you can tighten up your tremolo. It depends on how you have it set up. But I wouldn't say it's more difficult. I'd say it's just you're going to have to really listen to the pitch as you bend those strings and make adjustments as you need to be in tune, keep the whole thing in tune. But don't let it stop you. Having a floating tremolo, that's totally fine. So moving on, we're moving on to the D chord. So look at the measure, third measure of the second system, and you'll see the D chord on top, and we're going to do some D chord licks. So that's going to put us up in this position, like we're doing. So this next little series of licks is taken from sort of a D major pentatonic position here, with your first finger on the 7th fret. So you start with your third finger playing the 9th fret, bending a whole step. Use your 4th finger to grab that 10th fret. Same figure we've been using this whole time. We're just kind of moving it up and down the neck, right? So there it is there on the 9th and 10th frets. And that makes a D chord sound. It's the 3rd and the 5th of a D chord. You could do a full D triad this way with both of those. But I'm just doing these 2 notes. Okay? And then you slide this down a whole step. And that sounds really cool. And then we go right to our D position again with a slide. Okay? Slide from the 7th to the 9th fret with your 3rd finger on the D string. And there's your D tonic note right here, 7th fret of the G string with your 1st finger. And then we end this with a... Now, I'm going to opt to use my 2nd finger on this particular bend because I have to reach a little further with my 4th finger. And this is a trick I do sometimes with these double stop bends. I'll use the 2nd finger instead of the 3rd because I have a longer stretch to reach this 4th finger because I'm on the high E string now with that 4th finger. And I'm still using this finger to sort of help this bend a little bit. Okay? So that whole measure sounds like... I used the 3rd finger that time. But, it doesn't matter which one you do. It might be a little easier to use the 2nd finger. Because then we're going to land on this little double stop. And you're going to need to pinch that. Pick and A finger or M finger. Okay? So that whole measure, when we get to the D chord, on into the measure after it, sounds like... It gives you this sort of D7 sound. Okay? So let's try that all together. The D chord measure on into the following measure on the next line. Ready and slow and... Cool. Let's do that one more time. I bet you want to try it one more time. Ready and slow and... Okay. And this whole D chord, is a 12-bar blues, so the D chord happens for 2 measures. And then we're going to wrap it up getting back to the A chord by shifting our position way up here to 1st finger on the 12th fret, 4th finger on the 15th fret, and grab that 15th fret with your 4th finger and use your 3rd finger to bend up a whole step, and we pinch these. Okay, so that's your regular old bluesy minor pentatonic lick, but with a pinched little double stop note on top. And I bend that last note ever so slightly, as much as a half step. You could bend it up a a half step to sound like, but I'm just giving it a little bluesy bend. Sorry. Okay, and I'm kind of killing those notes like after I play them. You could let them ring all the way, but it's slightly more percussive when you got this. That sounds a little bit more like a chicken. I'm gonna grab my tie-dye shirt here because it is hot and sweaty today. Okay. Okay, let's keep working through this, and I'll take a couple more questions. Keep them coming because we'll have some time here. So that takes us back to the A chord. So we're halfway through the solo now. So why don't we go ahead and play this first half of the solo from the top right up to where we stopped with the track. And we're going to do this with this really slow rhythm track, okay? I'll count you in from the top. Now, that was supposed to be really slow. What is that? 40, 55. I've got a 40 beat per minute one here. Why isn't it? Stand by. Gonna figure out why I can't read these all the way through. I gave it too long of a title and I can't see the tempo marking at the end. Oh, please, come on. And of course, it doesn't lift some. There we go. Okay, 40 beats per minute. Here we go, the slow rhythm track. From the top. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Time. Let's play that same thing. Now you're hearing it a little bit more in context, all right? One more time, from the top up to that point. One and 2 and 3 and 4. Missed one note there, but we'll get it on the next round. Okay, I'll keep moving through this, and then we'll pause for a couple questions. So that lands us on this note, which is your A tonic note up here, and you're back in this A major pentatonic position that we started in, down low. So now we're up an octave. And we do this series of double stop bends, which is really cool. So that's reaching up to the high E string with the 4th finger, bending the 16th fret. At this point, it's just easier to know, okay, here's your 1st finger in this position, and now here's your 2nd or 3rd finger, 2 frets higher. Anyway, that is the 16th fret. Whole step, and then with the A finger, pluck that high E string with your 4th finger, and then you move this whole thing down a whole step. Yeah, that's cool. And now you do your standard little double stop bend there between the G and the B strings. So that measure goes. Okay, so in context from the measure before, you'll hear 2 and okay. So I'm kind of trying to introduce you to this series of, notice what we're doing here is we're basically bending the second note of the scale up to the third. So again, there's your third and your tonic. It's kind of like doing sliding sixths. But you can do these with bends. That's a bit of a trick, and I cover that extensively in the Classic Country Chops course, my little method course on jam play. So in that measure, all we're doing is we're landing on the A note, then we got okay. Then we're going to hang out in this position for a moment and wrap it up with that same lick we started with, but up an octave. So M, pick M, or M, thumb M. And then that little move, okay? Moving on, we're going to go to the E chord, the 5 chord in our blues, and that's going to set us up right here in this position of an E major pentatonic, a little pattern for a moment. And we're going to do this kind of real stock chicken picking kind of thing. Okay, so 4th finger on the 12th fret, 3rd finger on the 11th fret, give it a whole step bend. Pinch them both at the same time. Those 5 times in a row. Release the bend and then play those 2 notes together. And then to continue that, we keep our 1st finger down and use our 3rd finger down here on the 11th fret and bend it a half step. Release. 1st finger. So the 1st finger stays steady while your 3rd finger bends that 11th fret up a whole step. Push bend. Pinch them all those 5 times. Let that release on the last one, and then move your 1st finger down to the 9th fret of the D string. So that measure is that's pretty cool, huh? So what's happening there? Well, I got the 5th of the chord, and this bends up to the 3rd. So that's just stock E major triad stuff. And then this one, anyone know what that note is? That is the 7th of the E chord. That's your flatted 7th. It's like, okay, so we're bending this to up to the 7th of the E chord. You could play that way, but it's a cool sound when you do the bend. Okay, so that measure again. Let's try that together. Ready and a slow and. Okay. And then we wrap up the E chord with this real simple lick. We're going to be down here in this position now. Okay, so your 1st finger is on an E note. And your 3rd finger bends up a whole step. You're going to have to pull this one. And then bend, release. And then E note. And then those two notes, the third finger and first finger of the E string. So this is like using all these notes out of an E chord, you know, like an E major pentatonic shape. So those two measures all together. Okay, very much E chord sounding stuff for those two bars. Let's play those two measures together really slow. Already, and a slow E and And then we're on the home stretch because we've got this same figure just moving to different parts of the neck. So we're going to go back to our A minor pentatonic shape here, first finger on the 5th fret, and we'll use our 3rd and 4th fingers to do that same lick right here. And then our little chicken sound. Bend that up ever so slightly. Then what do? You move this all back down to the position we started with and do that same lick. And then we just have a little 2nd fret of the A string bend a whole step and release, or a half step and land down there. So starting on the E chord, the 4th system, I'm not exactly sure, I know Chris rearranged this tab a little bit, but starting on where the E chord is with this little double stop, okay, start right there and play it to the end. Already, and a slow E and A minor pentatonic position. Okay, so one more time together on those last 4 bars, starting on the E chord, up here in this position. You see this the same thing, with some little variations, and then right here, then right here. Okay, so we're working this same lick in a bunch of different positions and a bunch of useful positions for playing around the chord changes. Here we go, from the E chord on to the end. Already, and a go, E and. Now at any point you could do those little chicka chicka chickas, you know, I could go. And always throw those little dead string chucks in there if you're feeling it. Okay, I'll pause to take a couple of questions here. Do your double picks count in the timing? Do your double picks count in the timing? I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that. Everything you do counts in the timing, sure. The little clicks are the pickup notes at the top, so it's 4 and then you're on the 1. And anytime you do those little clicks, you're just doing them where you have a space, where you have a pause of long enough time to do so. So if I'm playing a lick that's like that, I can go. If I'm really active, I can go. So sure, they do take a time. I'm not exactly sure if I'm answering your question or not. But yeah, it's all about getting the feel for this and listening to this kind of music a lot. And you will hear, you'll hear where other players do those. You know, doing this lesson, you're going to see a lot of them written out specifically, as I suggest. And you'll hear me kind of throw in a couple of them every now and then, just by feel. So I wouldn't think about it too much. Just kind of throw them in there. Do this for a second. Let's just do this exercise. 2, 3, 4. Throw it in a couple of those little clicks. One more time. That's a good example of kind of how to use those. Is your Tele a 72 or a custom? This is, well, it's funny you mentioned that. This is a 72 Tele pickup right here, from what I was told by the guy who put it in there. And that's a 72 Strat pickup in the middle. This is some type of Strat pickup. I'm not really sure what that is, but that's definitely got a Strat. This middle pickup I love. I use this one all the time. Nice Strat sound. But yeah, this is 72 Tele bridge pickup from what I'm told. It's got the cloth wire around it. I'm not sure if you can see that. It's got staggered pole pieces. This particular guitar is a 1992 Mexican-made Telecaster, and I think they called this the Nashville Tele, the 3 pickup. It came with 3 pickups in it, but none of them were these particular pickups. This was a really cheap guitar, like a $250 used Mexican-made Strat that was given to me by Drew Emmett. I played in Drew Emmett's band for many years. He's one of the frontmen for Leftover Salmon, and his side band was the Drew Emmett Band. I played with him for years, and we did a kind of a mix of acoustic and electric music in the sets. And I would be flying in from Nashville, where I lived at the time, and he would take the van and meet us on tour. And I would fly in with an acoustic guitar, and he'd bring me an electric. He said, "What do you want this time? You want the Les Paul? Do you want the thin line?" He had a cool thin line Tele, or do you want the regular Tele? Whatever. Do you want the 335? He had all these electric guitars, and he would bring me one to play. And I loved this guitar so much that over the years, he eventually gave it to me one year for Christmas. And I've since done, it already had a bunch of mods, and I've since done some other mods. I like using these like Fender amp knobs on the volume and tone controls because they're easier to reach if I'm doing volume swells. And it's easier just to kind of roll back the volume when I need to and roll it up. 5-position switch like a Strat. Replaced the tuners, replaced the saddles with nice brass saddles. So when you get a good guitar with a good neck and it has some mojo and some sound, you can always modify all those cheaper parts, because those Teles, the only difference really is they came with a bunch cheaper tuners, cheaper saddles, cheaper pickups, etc. Cool. So you're hearing that 72 Tele sound. That's really neat. My favorite kind of Telecaster pickup is Seymour Duncan 54 Custom. Those are the closest that I've found to like real nice vintage Tele sound. I actually have a custom guitar that has already been made for me by Rebirth Guitars, and I used it on a couple of the Jam Play series recently that we filmed. I sent it back to him to do some work on the setup, but that one I requested that 54 Seymour Duncan Tele bridge pickup. This one's great. It's got the twang and everything. It's just a little bit on the harsh side, which is one of the reasons I have to roll that tone knob down so much. So let's go ahead and play this whole solo with the track at the slow tempo. And I'll give you a couple opportunities to go through this. If you want to just listen the first time, that's fine. We'll play it once and then I'll stop it and then we'll play it again. Here we go. Pickin' with the Chickens Part 2, 40 beats per minute. One and two and three and four. Cool. Okay, let's do that one more time. Now you have it a little bit more in your head. Obviously, this is a lot to memorize. You know, ultimately you want to memorize the licks, the phrases, and start applying them to your own style. And obviously these jam tracks here are available for all you Jam Play members. And I go through the progression 4 times. So you got time to like really jam on this and stretch out and put these licks into use in your own style. And we got 3 different tempos. This is the slowest one. Really slow, 40 beats per minute. So let's try it with this track at the slow tempo one more time. All 1, 2, ready, and go. Okay, how'd you do? Let's go ahead and just play this through the other tempos. We'll go to the medium tempo now, which is 55 beats per minute, and play Pickin' with the Chickens, Part 2. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. you're hearing it a little bit more in context now with this performance tempo. So let's do that one more time. Why not? We have time. We have about 8 more minutes here. So let's go ahead and play that again with the medium tempo, mid-tempo rhythm track, 55 beats per minute. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool. We got a couple more questions coming in. We got some time for some more questions, so please type them into the chat. Can this be played in a higher octave? Well, some of it can, but once you're up here, that's as high as you can get. So you can certainly take these first figures and do that up here. That, you can't go any higher. Yeah, that's the only part that you could play an octave higher, basically. But it's always a good practice to take licks that you have learned and apply them to a higher octave. A lot of this stuff here is really sort of specific to the string groups and the range of the neck you're playing in. But certainly if you're doing these kind of licks down in open position, you want to know how to do those. You want to know how to do those up the neck for sure. D position. I don't have a 22nd fret. Traditional Telecasters only have 21 frets. Same with Strats. If you had a 22nd fret, which many guitars do, then you could do those D licks an octave higher, but I can't on this guitar. So sure, there's some limitations to that, but any lick you learn, like all this stuff at the top, like do that on a D chord. Know those licks in different chords and that's called transposition. Transposing a lick to one chord or another or a different key. That's really valuable. And knowing how to play stuff in different octaves is also very valuable. Okay, send in other questions if you have them. Last call. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and try this at the faster rhythm track, 70 beats per minute. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty fun, huh? Now that you hear it actually at what we would consider performance tempo. This is a composed solo, obviously. You could put this over anything that's using these changes in the key of A. However, the point is just to learn this language and apply it to whatever songs that you are playing on your country guitar style. So dig into this as deep as you would like. Taking each of these licks in this grand context of the solo is valuable. So I'd say learn this solo if you have time. And then expand on it. So let me kind of demonstrate. We got one more question coming in. And then I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate how I might jam on this. So I'll put on that track again. I'll play the solo. And then I'm just going to jam and kind of try to use some of the same ideas and expand on them, you know, rearrange them, and just have fun with the rhythm track. So all of you who are not Jam Play members, if you're just lurking, which we know some of you are, that's fine. These are offered, you know, to everybody on the site, on the YouTube page and on the Facebook page. But you have a lot of perks for actually being a member. You can download all these rhythm tracks and download the tablature and access all of these lessons in the archive and everything else that Jam Play has to offer, which is plenty of material. Have you done any session work for country artists? Well, I did live in Nashville for a long time, and I was mostly in the acoustic scene back then, in those days, in the mid to late. I would live there from 2003 to 2009, and I was playing with a lot of bluegrass and Americana artists. And I barely played electric guitar during that time. But I did some sessions in Nashville. And since then, though, I guess, yeah, I've done a lot of session work here in Colorado, where I live now, for some artists, and produced an album by my friend Jackie and the Racket. Produced that album and played a bunch of cool Telecaster stuff on it. That's available on Spotify, Jackie and the Racket. There's an EP and a full-length album that I produced and played a bunch of guitar on. So you can hear me playing a bunch of stuff on those if you wanted to check it out. Also, a friend named Barbara Jo Kemmer. She had one album I played on, and she's about to release her second album that I played on. So, yeah, not like big artists or anything. You know, I'm a little bit kind of grassroots, I guess. But and then our band Grant Farm. You know, we have a bunch of albums out. Just check out Grant Farm on Spotify or Apple Music or any of those. And I'm also running mega merch sales right now. If you contact me directly, I'll cut you a really good deal on any of my solo CDs, any of the Grant Farm CDs, and also Grant Farm has 3 albums on vinyl, which are really, really cool. Okay, so that looks like it's it for the questions. I'm going to play you out here. I'm going to play through this solo one more time at performance tempo, and then I'm just going to jam on it for a while. Okay? Here we go. All right. That was fun. I got most of it. That's part of the fun is you just, you go for it. You try to follow your muse, follow what your ears are telling you, follow what your fingers have learned from doing these licks and stuff. And, play along with that a bunch of times in a row and you'll start getting really, really good at it. So it's been real fun. Thanks, Chris, for manning the mission control there. And thank you all for participating. Next week, we have another country solo. Same time on Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern. And I'm also doing the classic Americana songs and tunes on Tuesdays, 6 p.m. Eastern, here on jamplay.com. Thanks so much, everybody. Tyler Grant. We'll see you soon.